my name is Jessica Alton Cooper, and today I'm going to be making with you a watermelon cake. So the objectives for our activity today are to learn how to eat a healthy meal as a dessert. So this watermelon cake serves as a healthy meal. It also promotes healthy lifestyles, which is important in our youth organizations like 4-H. And another objective is some knife skills and some food safety. So we're going to start today with our watermelon. And of course we need a cutting board. And what we're going to do is shape the watermelon like a cake. So we're going to need first to properly wash your hands, which is a step that I've already done. And then we're going to need to slice the top and the bottom of the watermelon off. So it's a little tough to begin with, but we'll get it down. You never want to cut towards yourself, but you want to make sure the bottom of your watermelon is pretty square. So that's what I was checking for there. Then we're going to cut the top layer off. Again, you want to try to get it as square as possible. If it's not square, it's not a huge deal in the beginning because we can always shape it afterwards. Now that we've got a flat top and a flat bottom, we're going to go ahead and trim around the edges. So we need to cut all the rind off because that's not a part that we're going to be eating. So we've got this piece. And as we go, I'm going to rotate the watermelon away from me so I'm not cutting towards myself. And then we're going to flip the watermelon in order to get the bottom pieces off. So at this stage, you're not really worried too much about how it's going to look now because you're going to have a lot of opportunity, like I said, to shape it later on. So this is just a rough cut to get most of the rind off. And this goes pretty quickly. You just have to make sure that your knife is pretty sharp because the rind is pretty thick. And we're using all fruits that are grown in Florida today, which is pretty neat. It's not the season for some of these items, so they're not from Florida, but during peak season you can get all of these items in Florida. The county that I'm from is a big watermelon county, so I find it's pretty important to support the agriculture industry. See, I'm trimming up the bottom pieces, and you'll see that it doesn't quite look like a cake yet. So the transformation really comes when we start the icing. So once we get this cut, we're going to set up our icing and get it ready to go. As you can see, we're getting pretty much all the white off from the rind, and then we're going to go back in. We're almost there to where we can flip our watermelon over and really begin to shape it more. So definitely want to use 2 hands there. It's pretty heavy still, even though we've cut a lot of it off. And now we're shaving around the outside. Again, not cutting towards ourselves. Make sure you have your trash can handy right behind you. Alright, so I'm also going to shave some of the top portion off so that way it looks more like a cake. So as we round these edges, I'm going to take a look at what the best cut is going to be for the top. And what I usually do when I make this cake is I cut the remainder of the watermelon and I put it in another dish. So I'm going to cut the top off. Try to get as flat as we can. And then I'm going to set this piece over to the side. So I don't want to be too wasteful. And we're going to flip it and do the same thing with the top. So that way it looks the most that we can like a cake. So this is our top layer of our cake and our bottom layer. And as you can see, it's not real square. So I'm going to continue to shave off the top just a little bit to get that true square on the top. So all that watermelon set off to the side. Now we're going to work on our icing. I've already pre-opened these containers because it takes a little bit of time. So for the time's sake, I use coconut milk in order to make the icing. This works well for kids that have any type of dairy allergy or are looking to change out dairy for another option. So I absolutely support the dairy industry, but this is a great substitution and it makes a great icing. So we're going to scrape out the top layer, which is basically solidified. So you're going to need to refrigerate this part 24 hours beforehand, and sometimes you even really need to stick it in the freezer before that. So we're going to scrape out all the really heavy separation from the top, and then you're going to put the rest off to the side. And you can use it for all different items, but today we're just using the top for icing. So I'm going to close that container. It gets a little messy, so what I like to do is set it on some parchment paper or a paper towel. So that way my area doesn't get too messy. You want to be really careful when opening these cans so that way you don't cut yourself. And we'll get that out. And I'm just using a regular rubber spatula in order to do the icing portion today. So we've got almost all of it separated out. Alright, close that up, put it on a paper towel to not make a mess. And then some of the things that you're going to put in the icing to flavor it are you're going to put a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I like to use the pure vanilla extract, not the imitation, just because I feel like it tastes better. So we'll put a teaspoon of that in. And then we'll set our vanilla off to the side. And then I add honey for sweetener. So it's a really good sweetener. It's also pretty good for you in comparison to sugar. You can substitute sugar in this recipe if you have someone that doesn't desire to use honey. And I put about a teaspoon and a half in this. Close up our honey and put it off to the side. We're going to scrape the edges of this bowl with our spatula. And then you're going to use a hand mixer in order to get the icing mixed right. Your goal here is to get stiff peaks in your icing. So it takes just a few minutes of mixing for it to really stiffen up. And then while we're getting our fruit cut, I'm going to put the icing in the refrigerator or the freezer. I generally prefer the freezer because I like it to stay pretty stiff. So it's almost there. As you can tell, it comes together pretty quickly. It takes about 2 minutes at the most in order to make this. Okay, it's come together pretty well. And I'm going to go ahead and stick this in the freezer. Alright, now that that's in the freezer, we're going to go ahead and work some more on our watermelon cake. So I like to use a rounded dish to put my watermelon in. And that's because the way that we decorate it, some of the icing may fall a little bit to the bottom. Same with some of the decoratory items that we use. I use sliced almonds and some fresh fruit, which we'll talk about in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and move this watermelon off to the side because we're not using it. Same with our spatula. Keep our area nice and clean. And then I'm going to switch out our large knife for a smaller knife that I'm going to use to cut some fresh fruit with. So you always want to make sure that you properly wash your fruit prior to using it. So today I have for you some strawberries and some blueberries. And with these, you're just going to cut the top off. So let's move this watermelon out of the way so you can see what we're doing here. You're going to cut the tops off. And then I like to slice them long ways, just a few times, because I like to decorate with the strawberries. Slice most of the strawberries for you today, so that way we don't have to spend too much time on that. Just a few berries to really demonstrate what we're doing here. And you really want to toss any berries that are not very pretty or are having issues with the skin peeling off, because then they're not as aesthetically pleasing. So we're going to move all of our strawberries back over into our fresh fruit bowl. And then you'll see we have half blueberries and half strawberries. And we may not use all of them, but I like to get a big container of each, so that way we have plenty to work with. And get ready to bring our icing back out. I can move our cutting board out of the way now. Set it off to where we're not using it. Then we've got our watermelon straight. I see a couple of places where it can be trimmed just a little bit, so we're going to work on that real fast while our icing is chilling. And again, you're not too worried about trimming it all off, but you're going to try to get the best that you can. That way it looks most like a cake. When this cake is all the way frosted, most people can't even tell that there's watermelon underneath instead of a baked item. So this takes a lot less time, and it's very healthy for you because it just consists of fresh fruit and then honey and vanilla with some sliced almonds for this. But all ages love this dessert, and we're going to go ahead and get the icing out of the fridge. And it's stiffened up pretty good. Could use a little bit longer, but we're going to go ahead and go with it for today. So basically what we're going to do is spread this on. First we're going to dry off our watermelon. And the reason why we do that is so the icing sticks a little bit better. You can just do this with some paper towels lightly. It's most important on the sides because gravity takes its course. So we want to make sure that all of the sides are dry. Dispose of that paper towel, and then we'll work on the rest of the icing. I don't put it on too thick, just basically spread a nice thin layer. And if it's really thick, then you can add a little bit more It's really up to you and how you like it. Watermelon is pretty sweet and doesn't need a whole lot. And we're going to put it on the top and the sides. And these flat spatulas work awesome for that because they can handle the icing and they also don't make a huge mess. So the curved container is really the important piece of this puzzle because the icing then doesn't hit the table, instead it goes underneath, which works out good for when you're cutting the watermelon because it just ends up getting scooped up in the bottom if you're doing a 2-layer, or if someone wants a little bit of extra icing. It's a great way to do that. So I just keep spinning the dish and adding more icing on all of the sides. We're almost through with our icing part. As you can see, it's not super pretty yet, but it will be. So we're going to add a little bit more on the top so that way we can smooth it out. There's some rough edges up here that we're going to get together. What's great about this recipe is it works for anyone. If they have a gluten allergy or if they maybe have a dairy allergy, all of them can eat this recipe. So what we're going to do now is decorate. And what I like to do is place the strawberries around the edges. And this is where you want to have a pretty level surface because sometimes they slide a little bit. We're going to work with what we have and hope that it's level enough today. And I try to cut all of my strawberries semi-uniformly. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of difference in between, but that's okay. This one's a little bit too thin. Decorate it however you like. This is just my preferred style of doing this. And I like to add them all the way around the top, and then I like to add them to around the bottom. So you can be as picky or choosy as you would like to be, but it's going to taste the same regardless, so it's okay to do it however you wish. We're going to keep layering these strawberries towards the middle. Working on that. We're almost to the point where we're ready to add the blueberries to the center, and you can really use any fresh fruit for this. I've seen it done with blackberries. I've seen it done with tropical fruits as well, like pineapple, and coconut works well instead of almonds like we said before. So it's really up to you and your taste preferences. Or I like to make this dessert for 4th of July, so I like to make it red, white, and blue. That's why strawberries and blueberries work for me. Okay. So now I like to fill the center with blueberries. So we're going to drop those in. A big component of this is making sure that none of your blueberries have stems while you're washing them. So you don't want anyone to get stems mixed up in their cake. So I just kind of drop them along in the areas that we're missing. Whoa, that strawberry took a dive. So that's where gravity sets in. We're going to go ahead and fix that area real fast. There we go. And that happens sometimes. Now what we're going to do is go and bring the strawberries around the bottom. And then we're going to fill this middle portion with almonds. Okay? And this part is a little difficult because it gets kind of messy if you touch the cake. You don't want to get it on your hands because then everything sticks to you. Out of strawberries, so we should have just enough to do the outside. And then we're going to work with our blueberries and our almonds. So then I take blueberries and I just kind of sprinkle them along the outside just because it looks nice. So we're sprinkling these along the edge so that way they kind of are a moat around our strawberries. Alright, so now we're going to sprinkle the blueberries on the top like we were doing before, hoping that our strawberries are not going to take flight, because sometimes that happens. But don't worry if it does, it's easy to cover up. If you have some malfunctions with your strawberries, it's not a huge deal. And then we sprinkle a couple around the edges. And this helps hold our strawberries in place as well. Alright, we're almost around the edge, and then we're going to add our almonds on. Our almonds, in my opinion, are the trickiest part, because sometimes they like to stick and sometimes they don't stick so well. So you have to be kind of patient, and I found some techniques that really do work well for the almonds. So with our almonds, you want to make sure that your hands are all the way dry. Also, you want to go and wash your hands so that way they're not sticky with fruit juice. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get our dry hands going. A couple of paper towels to make sure they're extra dry, or you can always use a clean wash towel. Alright, so now we're at the almonds. I use sliced almonds for this because they sit up against the cake pretty well. So what you're going to do is go along and press these with your hands. As we go along, we're going to make sure that the almonds stick the best that they can. And then rotate. And then we'll come back and cover up where some of the almonds are with some fresh fruit, because on occasion they get a little messy around the border, which is okay. If they're mixed in with the fruit, a lot of people really like that. We're almost all the way around our cake. We just have a little bit more to do. Alright, I think we're doing pretty good. I'm going to dry my hands off one more time, and then I'm going to show you the trick. So if you're going to do this or add nuts to any cake, the best way to keep them on is to grab a small piece of parchment paper and then go around the edges and press them in, because it won't stick to this parchment paper too bad. And what I'm going to do now is just clean off the edges of our dish a little bit, if there's any icing around the edges, just because I like it to look nice. Again, our objectives for today were to learn more about healthy lifestyles, which is eating fresh fruit instead of processed sugars. The other objective was to learn how to make a healthy dessert that a lot of people can enjoy, that may be dairy-free or could have a gluten allergy, and this is something that all of them would be able to consume. And our other objective is for you to learn how to construct a cake like this. So I think that we've met all of our objectives for today. When preserving this cake, you want to refrigerate it. As you can tell, the icing does, when it gets warm, it melts off a little bit, so you want to make sure that it's properly refrigerated, and you want to go ahead and construct it right before your event. And it takes about 15 to 20 minutes as you get good at it. So you'll get better and better if you keep working on it. Our ingredients for today were watermelon, strawberries and blueberries, sliced almonds for our cake and our decorations, and then our icing was coconut milk, refrigerated for at least 24 hours so it separates into the coconut milk and the fat rises, and then vanilla extract, pure, not imitation, and then I like to use local honey as my sweetener. Again, you can substitute sugar. For the fruits, you can substitute any fruit, and for the almonds, you can substitute coconut flakes or even sprinkles if you want to add some sugar component. And this watermelon that's left over to the side, you can dice up and just use it as a fresh snack for later. So thank you for listening.